Now, I believe.
Yes, Comrade, you are.
Thank you, Comrade Gurkarat and comrades of the BSc for inviting me for this occasion, giving me an opportunity to meet up with all of you guys. So, Lal Salam to all of you. So, comrades, we are here today to commemorate Comrade Bhagat Singh. I'm sure most of you know about him, about
I think his video is frozen, no?
Yes, Comrade Ajith, you're not audible and your video is frozen. I think there is some network issue.
Yeah, let's just wait.
Comrade Ajith, can you hear us?
Murali, can you hear us? Comrade Murali, you can hear us?
Comrade, you're on mute. Comrade Murali, you're on mute.
Comrade Murali?
Audible, Comrade.
you hearing me now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I was saying is that.
Acha, hold on, Comrade Murali. Acha, I'm just asking the organizers, are you recording these lectures?
Yes, Comrade, we are recording and पहले भी जो lectures हुए हैं, we upload them on YouTube.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Okay. Because I thought it will be evident, no? In the screen it comes that you are recording. I can't see.
But it is being recorded.
Oh, that's very good.
Okay. So as I was saying, this regarding Bhagat Singh, I'm sure that most of you would be familiar with his life and his struggle and the firm stand he took under conditions of severe repression while in jail, along with his other comrades, and also the keen intellectual interest he took in learning more, and his study of Marxism and Leninism while he was in jail, and his development into a conscious communist, because it is very much clear that at the time when he was active in the Hindustan Republican Organization, I don't remember the exact name of that, and also when that action took place, attacking that British officer as well as the action in the parliament of that time. He was not a communist as such, though he had socialist tendencies or leanings and all that. It is actually while he was in jail that he did make a thorough study with the limited material that was available to him. And through that, he came to some clarity on these questions. So I would urge all of you to try to read up as much as possible of what he has written at various times of the period of his life to understand that growth process. Because it's also important that when we evaluate a person, we try to understand how he arrived at what it is that we know of him now. Now, the most important text of Bhagat Singh in that regard is his clarity that the question of independence, which was the key question at that time, the fight against British imperialism, British colonialism, that the question of independence is not merely a question of throwing out the British from the positions of administration and power and all that, and replacing them with some Indians, but rather the question of the liberation of the broad masses of the country, those at the bottommost level of society, of the workers and peasants and all that. And interestingly, even far before he started becoming very active politically, at the age of 16, that would be at 1923, 23 or 24, he had written a piece on the question of the caste issue in India, on the question of untouchability as it was framed in those days. And quite clearly, he arrived at the position that the Dalits have to get organized and struggle for their own rights. And in a context where communal representation was being discussed and demanded by various groups and communities, that the Dalits have full right to demand that, and they should try to achieve it to protect their own interests. Of course, that was within the context of the imperial legislative affair and all that, and that would not have really led to any liberation for the Dalits and all that. But the point I'm trying to make is that he was trying to understand and had clarity on the specificity of the issue, rather than simply viewing it as a question that they would be emancipated or the overall, success of the independence struggle and all that. He was quite clear that there is a separate issue here, there is a specific issue here which has to be taken up, and those who are affected by that are the people who should really come forward to take it up. And he also accounts the experience of how the Naujawan Bharat Sabha tried to do propaganda activity on this issue and the negative response from the Jat peasantry that they had to face. So what I'm saying is that it is through a process of his own practice as well as the learning study that he did while he was in jail that he arrived at this position, clarity on the need for a socialist revolution. Now, in those days, that was what was broadly known, because the writings of Mao Zedong or the more specific writings of Lenin and Stalin on the colonial question, all these things were not broadly known in those days. What was known is of a socialist revolution which took place in Russia, and how that led to the emancipation of the toilers of that country. And therefore, that was a point of inspiration. We can see that Soviet revolution, the October Revolution, being a point of inspiration, was quite widespread. Like, say, for example, in Kerala, you had a person like Sahodharan Ayyappan, who was actually a social reformer. He was not a revolutionary by any means. He was a disciple of Narayana Guru, a rationalist, and vehemently anti-caste and anti-Brahminic. And he was the first person to write a poem about the October Revolution and calling upon the youth of Kerala to emulate that example and shake off their shackles. And it is also said that he was the first to introduce the term Bhagat, which is the Malayalam word for comrade, in the local language in Malayalam. So what I'm saying is that this October Revolution, the impact of the October Revolution and the message it carried out of the socialist revolution was quite common and broad at that time. And therefore, it's quite natural that Bhagat Singh and the youth of that period who were inclined towards a more radical transformation, a more radical outcome of the struggle against the British would get attracted to that and try to frame their ideals or their the aim of their struggle in those terms, rather than as we understand it today, a new democracy of the two-stage revolution and all that. Because all these things were already there in Lenin's writings. There were already speeches of the Communist International and also at the University of the Toilers of the East. I might be getting that name wrong again. Similarly, there were writings of Stalin on the Chinese revolution question. And the writings of the Chinese comrades also, Mao Zedong and others. But most of this was not broadly available in those days in India. So when Bhagat Singh speaks about socialist revolution, we should not take it literally, but rather as in the sense of a revolutionary transformation which would liberate, emancipate the broad toiling masses of the country. And as I mentioned earlier, that would have addressed specifically the caste question, because he was paying attention to that from the very beginning itself. Now, these positions that he took in the 1930s can be contrasted to that of the undivided CPI of that period. Though the CPI had a formal program of talking about democratic revolution and all these things, it was, it was not actually addressing the specificities of the situation in our country, concrete situation in our country. An example of that, leave aside the caste question, which they just, it was just a cursory treatment of the caste question in that program, old program of the undivided CPI. Look at the question of the slogan of land the tiller, which was a broad slogan capturing the essence of the agrarian revolution. Now, land to the tiller, how was it understood in our context? Who exactly were the tillers of this land? If the issue was addressed from that angle, from the concrete reality that was existing here, then definitely it would be seen that the tillers were mostly the subcontinent, part of the subcontinent were the Dalits. In some part, agnostic slaves like in Kerala and some parts of Tamil Nadu. In others, they were bonded laborers. Basically, they were landless, but forced to labor on the land of whoever they were residing in their huts, or who was their masters, like in Kerala and all that. So they were toilers. And in the case of Kerala, it has been estimated that though they came to only about approximately at the most 7% of the population, that was in the mid-19th century, they were the actual laboring force, the productive laboring force, sustaining agricultural activities in the whole of the region. But evidently, they were the tillers. But that was not how the Communist Party addressed the question. Rather, tiller was understood to be the tenant, the peasant. And this continued all the way without any examination of the issue or a analysis of the issue or the re-evaluation of the issue. All the way, for example, when you come to the land reforms that was implemented in 1957 by the undivided Communist Party's led government in Kerala, there again, land reform demanded or tried to carry out a transfer of land, ownership of land from the traditional feudal owners to the tenant peasantry, totally leaving out actual tillers of the land, that is the Dalits. and in some parts of northern Kerala, the Adivasis also, some Adivasi tribes also. So what I'm saying is that you contrast this history of the undivided Communist Party to that of Bhagat Singh. One sees that there he is trying to concretely address the question. I mean, what is the actual reality here? Whether it be caste or whether it be the classes that are here, whether it is the matter of the actual relations that are existing, he was trying to address it concretely. I'm not saying that he did it in a successful manner or a comprehensive manner, but that was his attempt. And that was the was looking at the question, which was the essence of Marxism, which is the concrete analysis of the concrete situation. Whereas those who were officially declared as the communists of the leadership of the undivided Communist Party were approaching the question in a rather mechanical manner, simply taking over the slogans or the writings that they received from abroad and interpreting our reality in those terms, rather than understanding our reality in the light of Marxism. We say, for example, if we compare what happened in China, where Mao Zedong, how he addressed the question. We know that for a long time, the understanding in the communist movement was that the peasantry is a backward section of the population. Given their, it's not the intrinsic, but given their conditions of life, their activities, economic activity and all these things, they are not in touch with new developments. There is a stagnant sort of a social life, and altogether that is what leads to characterize them as a backward section. And we know that in the initial period, the instructions given by the Comintern to the Communist Party of China was to try to organize insurrections in the cities, which tried and failed, of course, because of the overwhelming balance of forces against them. But if you look at the way how Mao addressed the question, you just take, for example, his report on the peasant uprising in Hunan. After analyzing what actually reporting of actually what happened in Hunan, of the various methods, measures adopted by the victorious peasantry in suppressing feudalism and establishing their domination, rule of some sort, he concludes that report by saying that the peasantry is on the march in a revolutionary manner, and every revolutionary force in the country is going to be tested by them. Whether they are going to stand in the van and go along with that, or they are going to tail this force and make fun of it or try to pull it back. I'm not giving a verbatim quote and all that, but that is the essence of what he said. Now, if you look at it from the traditional Marxist theoretical standpoint, that was what was existing till that point, that is something very unorthodox. It's a total break from what was considered and talked about till then. To say that the peasantry, which is considered backward, is going to decide who is a revolutionary and who is not a revolutionary. So then what about this proletarian vanguard, or the proletarian class as the leading class and all that, the most revolutionary class and all that? So how can peasantry decide whether the proletariat is a revolutionary or not? So obviously it is not that Mao Zedong was denying the leading role of the proletariat. But what he was pointing out is that there is a huge revolutionary uprising going on. A huge mass of people are out there on the way to revolution, carrying out revolution in the way they can understand or can carry out. So what should a vanguard do? The vanguard should try to get into the movement and lead them, rather than saying that this is a backward, this is not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to carry out the revolution according to our plan and our scheme, which is that of focusing on the cities and all that. So you see that, again, what Mao does there is capturing the essence of Marxism, which is the concrete analysis of the concrete situation, getting into that, and taking lessons from that, and pointing out a way. And if you see further on, the writings on, for example, on correcting mistaken ideas in the party and various other struggle against liberalism and all these things, you can see that what he's trying to do is addressing the task of building a proletarian party from among the peasantry. because the vast majority of the membership of the Communist Party were the peasants, the peasants were the bottommost level of society, the landless and poor peasants. And all these things that he speaks about in those mistaken ideas and all that, and the matters of liberalism and all that, are all very much related to petty production and the attitudes that emerge out of that also. So you see that there again, what is he trying to do? He is not trying to fit a scheme on reality and declare that this is how things have to be, and these people cannot be made into proletarian revolutionaries, so we have to concentrate in the city and try to recruit from there. That should be the main focus of activities, but rather he is starting from the reality that we are here, there is a revolutionary mass here, and so how do we recruit and mold a proletarian party from out of this? He is addressing that way. So that's what I'm saying, is that is what we see in Bhagat Singh. He is trying to address reality from what he understands of Marxism. That understanding was imperfect and there was a lack of knowledge on many things, all that. And he came to that at a later stage where he could really practice it also. All that is true, the limitations of his understanding and all that. But the basic of Marxism, the concrete analysis of the concrete, he grasped that. And he tried to apply that. And that, I think, is the most important thing that we have to learn in the present conditions where we are faced with similar situations. Like, say, for example, the recent students uprising in Bangladesh or Sri Lanka, or the various movements taking place around the world. You see, the masses, recently for this, that issue of rape in Calcutta, where the students came out in large numbers all over the country. So you see that various issues are agitating the masses, and they definitely do react to it. They don't wait for somebody to come and give them a scheme of activity of how to proceed and all that. They come out on their own understanding, and leadership emerges from that. Now, obviously, as Lenin pointed out, in the existing conditions, any spontaneous activity will inevitably carry the consciousness of the ruling classes or of the bourgeoisie. So one cannot expect that this leadership that is emerging spontaneously is going to have a proletarian understanding or a communist understanding. It can happen. They can arrive at that through the process of their practice. But on the other hand, it's quite likely that won't happen, and they will get hijacked by the various ruling class or exploiting class political parties. But the point is that there are mass of people out there, of students, youth, and all sorts of people, of coming from various classes out on the streets. And that's important because, as Lenin points out, at times when, my battery is getting very, very low. Let me just connect up a charger to this. I'm just signing off for a few minutes. I'll come back immediately.
Right, Comrade. जैसे कॉमरेड अजीत ने बोला कि how the so-called communist parties, the undivided communist parties, failed to do a concrete analysis of the concrete solution, of the concrete situation. जब वो मार्क्सिज्म की बात करते हैं, जो खुद को मार्क्सिस्ट कम्युनिस्ट बोल के भी कभी कोई चेंज क्यों नहीं ला पाया, कभी एक वैनगार्ड रेवोल्यूशनरी फोर्स वो क्यों नहीं बन सकते हैं, क्योंकि उन्होंने कभी भी रियलिटी को एड्रेस नहीं किया, विच भगत सिंह ट्राइड टू डू. एक सेमी फ्यूडल समाज में किस तरीके से क्रांति आनी चाहिए थी, एक सेमी फ्यूडल सेमी कॉलोनियल सोसाइटी में इट विल बी द प्रोलेटेरिएट अलोंग विद द poor and landless peasantry leading the revolutionary struggle, and that struggle will be against imperialism. ये चीज भगत सिंह ने समझी थी. बहुत कम उम्र में भगत सिंह got martyrdom, और when he started getting hold of Marxism अच्छे से and अच्छे से चीजों को समझने लगे, तो फिर उसी दौरान उनका फांसी हो गया. बट भगत सिंह वाज द वन जो खुद को कम्युनिस्ट बोलते थे, और वो इन पार्टीज से अलग थे, वो इन अपॉर्चुनिस्ट पार्टीज से अलग थे, और वो truly revolutionary struggle against imperialism, उसकी बात करते थे.
Oh, that light is horrible. This might be better. Is that okay?
Yes, Comrade, visible and audible.
Okay, so I had to shift. Anyway, so what I was saying is that you have all these movements coming up, and so the question of the challenge before the vanguard forces, those who have a clarity of ideology and all that, Voltairean ideology, the task is how do we link up these sort of movements? The issue is not whether you have a large force, whether you are able to, influence these movements through the presence of your, the number of the people that you can mobilize on your own and bring out on the streets. Of course, that is important. And if you have such a force, it makes things far more easier. But that is not the issue, because if you look at history, you can see that, for example, during the October Revolution period in Russia, at the time of the February Revolution, the Bolsheviks were a very, very small minority. And their organization was in a very bad state because of the severe repression of the Tsarist regime. But within a span of few months, precisely because under the leadership of Lenin, they could grasp the essence of the political situation and put forward accurate political slogans capturing the mood of the masses, which is one of the all power to the Soviets and also the slogans of bread, peace and all that. They were able to, influence that movement with their politics, not by their numbers. By taking that politics to the masses, they were able to influence that situation and win over more and more sections of the masses, ultimately leading to the October Revolution and the seizure of political power. That's a very important example before us. And it's you have to keep in mind what Lenin had noted at the time of the 1905 revolution, where he said that at times when the masses are there is an outpouring of mass activity, revolutionary activity and all that, it will seek ways to burst out, to come out. And the question is, are you there to provide them a way out? Because if you don't do that, then they are going to seek their own way and take that path. There again, the issue is the political intervention that you do, rather than the number of forces that you are able to mobilize. As I said, of course, that is not a bad thing, but that is not the decisive thing. The decisive thing is the political positions that you put forward and intervene. And we see that these sort of opportunities, these sort of situations come up again and again because the contradictions are intensified. And no matter what they try to do to appease the masses and confuse the masses or divide the masses, the reality of the sharp contradictions that they are facing in their lives and the severity of the exploitation that they are facing, the oppression that they are facing, inevitably propel the masses into struggle. That is something nobody can bar, nobody can block and prevent. Even during, you can think back of conditions of fascism, outright fascist oppression, not just fascist acts of suppression, but total fascist dictatorship, like what existed in Germany and Italy and all that. We see that despite that, there was a lot of resistance, and resistance kept on coming again and again. Despite heavy suppression, despite the arrests and murder of the activists leading that sort of thing, it again came up. It never stopped all the way up till the end of the World War. So that's true here also. Here, for example, during the emergency period under Indira Gandhi also, you can see that the resistance continued. Of course, it did not continue at the same pace and strength and all that, but it continued. And people took whatever opportunity, whatever method was available to express their opposition and protest and all that. So that is the most important thing, that the struggle will always be there. The masses will always be on the path of struggle, because they are always on the sufferers of the oppression and exploitation. Now the question is whether the vanguard is able to stand up with them, to give them proper direction at the most important time. And vanguard, we must keep in mind what Comrade Charu Majumdar said, that I am the party. Now that does not mean individualism. What he meant was that in a situation of setback or reversal and all that, it's the task of every communist to take up leadership on his own with whatever capacity he has or she has. You have to step forward, start organizing, start leading people, start doing propaganda, do whatever is possible given the situation, rather than sit back and wait, okay, let somebody come to lead me. So that is the essence of what CM said. And I think that is a very valid lesson throughout all periods, because as we know, in conditions of fascism, in conditions of the rule of bourgeoisie, revolutionary activity has never been an easy garden walk. It has always faced suppression, it has always faced defeats, setbacks, etc., etc. And it's through that process that it has always advanced and come forward. So there is nothing new about that. It can happen again, it can go on until, as Mao said, you fight, fail, keep on fighting until you finally win. So that perseverance, that is what is important. And I think that's something that we definitely can learn from Bhagat Singh, that the perseverance of Bhagat Singh and his comrades. For example, the sacrifice of Jatin Das. It was a small thing, to go on a hunger strike under conditions of, because in jail, in prison, the way the authorities carry out suppression is really brutal, because you are totally under their custody. So they have nothing to fear of. Unlike the police, who have some concern that ultimately they have to produce this person in court or give an answer to the judicial authorities at some point. As far as the jail authorities are concerned, they don't have any such limitations. And therefore, you can see that always within the jail, suppression has always been extremely brutal. Of course, it's not that they immediately start doing that, but once they decide to do it, it's brutal. And facing up to that brutal suppression and continuous harassment and persisting on that hunger strike for so many days, that's not something small at all. It's something huge. And it's something that one should keep in mind when you speak about perseverance, consistency, and all these things. If they can do it in those days, then definitely we in our age can do more than that. So that should be what we learn. I think the first thing, as I said, is the essence of Marxism, the concrete analysis of the concrete situation, addressing reality rather than trying to fit some scheme on reality. And from that, taking direction, proceeding, that always stick to revolution, because it is revolution that transforms society, and it is revolution that drives forward history. So sticking on the revolutionary path, carrying out a concrete analysis and of a concrete situation, trying to understand actually the situation, and drawing up your plan and activity according to that, and having full faith in the masses. They struggle, they will keep on struggling. And the question is whether we succeed in linking up with that. Whenever we succeed, we definitely are able to make advances. And another thing we have to keep in mind is that, like say, for example, all these recent mass struggles, like what happened in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, apparently they failed to achieve their actual objective. And once again, the ruling classes have succeeded in co-opting that movement for their own interest of one factor or the other. But the lessons, particularly the impact it has created on the consciousness of the people, of the masses who participated in that struggle, that is not going to go away. The masses, through their own activity, saw how they are able to confront a state and force the the leaders of that state to run away. Ultimately, they have had to flee. So that is not a small thing. That gives the masses a sense of their strength. So the masses' anger and the revolutionary urge and all that things are not going to last forever. It's there up in waves and goes away. But still, even when it goes away, the understanding that they achieved through that activity, that remains. And definitely out of that, some new sections will definitely emerge, who will start thinking deeply and try to link up with the genuine revolutionary forces in that country and try to see how they can actually achieve liberation and emancipation rather than becoming tools in the hands of this or that ruling class section. So these, I think, are the important lessons that we have to keep in mind. And finally, I would like to point out what the last paragraph was something of Bhagat Singh's writing on the political situation or something, where he says, that it requires a life of constant struggle, suffering, and sacrifice. To shake off dreams of personal comfort, then start to work. That is a very important thing, that taking a personal decision of dedicating your life for the sake of the people, to serve the people. We work as collectives, and definitely collective gives us energy and all that, but ultimately, every individual has to take a decision. What exactly are you going to do with your life? And here you have to keep in mind what CM reminded, that quite often you will see a lot of revolutionary activity and militancy among the youth and students at that particular age. And once they complete their studies and all that, a good chunk of them will drift away from that politics. And most of them will end up in a sedentary lives of what's going on usually around them. Now, whether one will end up like that or continue to be a revolutionary crucially depends not just on your individual decision, but also whether you succeed in linking up with the masses, whether you succeed in integrating with the basic masses, the working class and the landless and poor peasantry of our country. Because it is only from that you get that real energy, understanding, theoretically understanding the situation, or doing propaganda among the working class and this landless and poor peasantry, the basic masses of and all that, would give you some understanding, of course, of what is the actual situation. But it is only when you really experience it, when you live relying upon the basic masses, when you integrate with them, it is only then that you will really understand what actually is this mass like, what actually is the mass who are apparently very backward, because it is true that they do have a lot of backwardness among them, but at the same time contain a huge revolutionary potential. That is something that has to be experienced, not just understood through theory. And to experience that, you have to get integrated with them. So this, I think, is something that Bhagat Singh did point out to, though not in a very detailed manner. And that is something that was the quality of the earlier communist movement in its initial period, which it then lost when it became totally sunk in revisionism. And it was that whole tradition was regained, recaptured, and revitalized after Naxalbari, which brought a huge wave of youngsters to the field, into the practice, to integrate with the basic masses. And it is through that that we now have a huge range of leaders, number of martyrs, as well as those who are living today, who continue to lead the actual revolutionary practice in the country. So this, I think, should be the lessons that we take when we commemorate Bhagat Singh, and specifically identify his revolutionary qualities, his revolutionary ideology, and his commitment to the people as the distinguishing marks of that extraordinary life. Thank you very much for that. And